some time ago, we talked about trees on the beach here in the lake. We had some trees that don't belong on our beautiful beach. They were big and ugly. They were not supposed to be there. Overgrown, evergreen, big trees that were just creating a lot of mess and were unsightly. They were ruining the view, and we could not see the lake, beautiful lake. The way how this property was designed. And I got a lot of comments about those trees. People were talking about removing those trees, cleaning up those trees. The problem is, how can you remove the big trees? The big problem. And then Sorge volunteered to cut the trees down. And it was great. I mean, it was a lot of work, but all of a sudden saw the lake. It was clear, nice, everybody was happy. The only problem was Sorge was able to, with his tools that he had, he was able to cut the trees to a certain point and leave the stumps in the soil, in the ground. And although we could see the lake, but also we could see these ugly stumps, and we had to remove them. Nobody could do it. Now, Sorge volunteered to probably just dig them out a little bit with the shovel. The problem was that these trees were so deeply rooted in the soil, and all the roots, because they were all together, all the roots were interconnected, intertwined. And the issue is, because of the way how these trees were growing together, this whole soil was not even a soil, but just like a mesh of these little roots intertwined. You could not even put a shovel into the soil. It was like a pillow of roots that you cannot even dig down. So I said, well, the shovel would not work. I need to use probably, I have a pickup truck. It's old, rusty pickup truck, but it has a winch. Do you know what winch is? It's like a little device that has a steel cable, and you can pull with that thing. And you can pull it out of different things with that thing. So I said, let me bring my truck, and we will pull those roots, unsightly roots, from the ground with my winch. So I did. One Saturday, I came with my truck. We connect or attach that hook to this root or a stump. And I started to pull the root with my winch, but instead of root or stump coming out of the ground, my truck started to move to the trees. I put the brake, I put the emergency brake, everything. It was just not pulling the roots. My truck was pulled by the stumps. And I said, we need to have completely different approach, completely different level, completely different machinery to pull these roots out. And guess what? Yesterday, we asked my nephew, Elshama. His name is Elshama. Do you know what Elshama means from Hebrew? It means God hears. And we asked Elshama to come and pull those roots. So he came with one piece of equipment, which was a very heavy truck, couldn't do it. He went back to his business and brought a humongous, huge, I wish I took a picture to show you, a huge, like a tractor loader with a big scoop, like those industrial ones, with big tires like this and so on. And so he came here with that big machinery, and I'm looking at this situation. He just put the chain around that root system from the ground, like this, with huge bulk of this root system and the soil and everything. He just snapped it like effortlessly. The way how I see it, for me, we don't use any efforts. You don't have to dig, you don't have to do anything. The whole stump with the root system comes out, uprooted. That's a good word, uprooted. And so what he does is just like all these root systems. You can go to the beach and take a look. There are huge holes over there because he just uprooted and dumped it in the forest. Uprooted and dumped it in the forest. I look at him and I said, look, after he finished, a lot of dust, a lot of noise, he finished, he comes out of that tractor, and I said, look, thank you. That's a great help. We couldn't have done it by ourselves. We don't have capacity. We don't have tools. We don't have machinery to deal with this kind of a problem on ourselves. But you have that, so you came and helped us. And I just want to say thank you. And he says, all right, no problem. Anytime you need help, just let me know. Awesome guy. El Shammah. God hears. The reason why I'm mentioning this is this. How much effort, I guess the question is, how much effort did I use to uproot those trees or roots? Like, crazy job. How much effort did I use? I didn't use any efforts. I was just looking at the roots, and I see how majestically awesome they were uprooted. In fact, sometimes I think I envy these people who run those big machines. I think like something in my blood that I probably would be a great worker on those machines. I love them. But I did not use my efforts. I did not use my shovel. I have a great shovel, very sharp. I did not use it. And yet all the root systems were uprooted. Why I mentioned this story is that it directly coincides or related to this study of the book of Romans. Let me just give you this reference or how it relates to this book of Romans. The book of Romans, so far, we are in the chapter 3. We talked about these horrible root systems called sin. That Apostle Paul, throughout these 2 chapters, unveils that we have a root system in us called sin. That no matter what you do, you cannot uproot it. You tried it with you should see, we tried it with the shovel and we were like, oh my gosh, it's not even close, we cannot deal with it. Now, several things that we discover so far in these 2 chapters are that we have 4 categories of people. People who are godless, who don't care about God. That's the green trees on the beach that nobody cares about. They just grow by themselves. Obstructs the view, create a lot of mess, destroy the beach. Godless, sinful people. They just live as weeds. They just live like, pretty much like Apostle Paul described, like animals. Why? Because they don't keep God in their minds. That's the first category of people. The second category of people is moralist, like we discussed before. It's when Sorge comes with the saw chain and started to chop the branches. We try to be moral. We try to be a little bit better than others. And I have to give credit to Sorge. He did an awesome job clearing those branches. The only problem is he was not capable of removing the stumps. And the issue with the stumps is that when I looked yesterday, the moment he cut the tree, there are new growths, new branches coming out from those stumps already with brand new leaves and stuff. So each time when you chop the tree of sin in your life, you turn around and something new comes out. All the time. Why? Because the root system. You have to remove the root system. So I'm talking to my moralist, Sorge, and I'm like, can you chop it? Can you please teach me how to live properly? Can you give me structure for life? Can you give me habits, religious habits and stuff like this? It's all good. He did a good job, thank you very much. But the root system, you know, we go to colleges, we go to universities, we listen to nice sermons, we listen to good speeches, and it cuts some branches and we become a little bit more civil, we become a little bit better, positive maybe, polished, refined. That's what we do. Does it take care of the root system inside of us? No. The root system is such that I cannot remove it. It's so intertwined and becomes a part of me that we go to churches and it chops our branches here and there. We become a little bit more religious. We read the Bible, go to the prayer meetings. That's about it. What about the root system? Don't touch the root system, because when you start removing the root system, you're going to completely destroy the very essence of who I am. You should see these huge chunks of soil removed by that powerful machine. So, yeah, moralists do a good job. They cut the branches, but nobody can remove the stump. And then Pastor Olex comes in. That's the religious box. And the Pastor Olex says, you moralist, you psychiatrist, you psychologist, you therapist, don't do anything to the real problem. You just prescribes the medicine, you just give some shallow advice to people how to be positive. Do you know when we are talking about guilt, they tell you, they teach you to just look at your problem from different perspective. Just do some good stuff so that you don't feel that guilty. And that's it, that's how you deal with the guilt. They don't deal with the root. And I'm like telling to Sorge, hey, forget about your shovel. Let me show you my wonderful winch, I said. Let me show you my truck. Rusty truck with holes. That's religion. And so I come to Sorge and I put my cable to the root system and I tell him, let me show you how it works, my winch. And I put the button, doesn't work. Wait a second. Are you saying that religion doesn't work? No, when it comes to the root of a problem. It does. I told him, I said, Sorge, if you remove I texted him, I said, if you remove the root, I could pull it then. In other words, if you remove the system, my winch would drag the root system, but somebody has to pull it. So basically it's useless. Do you know that religion is useless? It can pull certain things when you remove the root of the problem. So my truck, beautiful truck with beautiful winch, was actually useless because it did not address the root of the issue. And then, remember, so this is the third category already, religious people. And then there was fourth category, which is faith. That's the loader. We realized that we cannot, that we chop the branches, we deal with our problems, but the root is in there. So we ask somebody who can, who has a loader. The power that is equitable, the tools that is equitable to the problem. Let me just tell you this. Somebody who has power that is equal to the kind of problem that I have. I need help from someone who has instrument that matches my magnitude of my problem. And the magnitude that my problem is that moral people cannot help me. I'm sorry, I know all your 5 steps to be successful, 5 languages of love language, all these different things that I learn and buy books in the Barnes and Nobles. No, it didn't help my scale of a problem. Then I went to religion. I listened to all these preachers and Baptists and charismatic preachers and all in between, and they tell me all this good stuff. It doesn't fix my root. All of this religion, different kinds of denomination, does not really fix me. And then I said, I need somebody who actually can give me help on the kind of level that I need. My root is so big. My root system is so wide that I need matching power. I need a loader, spiritual loader. And that's the fourth category of people, called people who live by faith. That's what Apostle Paul is talking about. Chapter number 3. Now, brothers and sisters, I have to give you a little bit of a warning right now, because if I don't understand what I'm dealing here with, what I'm dealing with right now, I can just miss the point. And here is the big take on things. Apostle Paul is preparing us to this message in chapter 3 by telling us, don't worry about the leaves and the branches, think about the root. We are all having huge root issues in our hearts and in our minds, and we need bigger than moral teaching, something bigger than religion even. In fact, Pastor John Piper, in one of his sermons, says, let me just give you this quote. He takes these 2 verses in Romans 3, verses 23 and 24, just 2 verses. And he says, if you build your life on these verses, If the truth of these two verses becomes the foundation of your life, only two verses, you will be unshakable in 100 crises. If these verses become the sun in the solar system of your life, all of your planets will orbit in harmony around the will of God. But if you put these verses out on the rim of your life, say near Neptune on Pluto, you need not be surprised if there is confusion and uncertainty and fear and weakness in your life. There are some truths that are so foundational and so central that you should memorize them, meditate on them, bind them to your mind and heart with chains and ropes and every kind of adhesive you can find. Many professing Christians are very weak and amble through their days pretty much like unbelievers because they don't hold on these verses the way a drowning man takes hold of his rescuer's arm. That's the introduction to this pivotal book or chapter in the book of Romans. In fact, let me just give you something else. Reformer, the great reformer of the church, Martin Luther, in his take of this passage, he says literally this. This passage, he says, the chief point and the very central place of the epistle to the Romans and of the whole Bible. Think about this. He says that this passage that we are going to cover today, I wish we take these two verses or this passage and just preach on this passage entire year so every single person in the church memorize them by heart, understand them, digest them, and it becomes part of their second nature. Not biggie, not any other objectives and priorities, not any other excuses. These two verses that might actually change your life in such a profound way that you will be like before and after. Think about this. If I tell you, if you just by the clicking your fingers like this, and you think about something that would change, you have some desires to change in the world. You understand that the world needs a lot of help, or changes, or rescue, or salvation, right? And think about this. What is the major issue that you have that if you had a chance to just twist your fingers and say, this problem to be resolved right now, in this very moment, what would it be? Financial issue? Relational issue? Maybe your ability to talk to God freely? Relationship with God? Tell me what kind of priority that you might have. World peace? Winning the election? And if you think about this, this is the moment of truth that actually can address any of those issues. If you properly, as a Christian, understand this. This is what makes you a religious person, transfers you from the box of a religious person, churchgoers, to the person of faith, right here. Before and after. This is what makes you a person who was riding the truck with the winch, trying to pull the roots all your life and spinning your wheels, to a person who says, I can't, I need El Shammah, with the loader, who would uproot everything that is wrong in my life. Do you know the difference between a religious person and a person of faith? A huge one. And in the practical sense, a person of faith is a person who lives the best version of life that you were supposed to live. The best version of you that God created. Without that, no religion, no morals, no discipline, nothing can help you. You will still suffer or struggle with the root system. With that, I am giving you this title of this discussion today, which is the gift of righteousness. If you think about this, the loader that came to our beach yesterday was a gift. He didn't take money. He didn't even ask for money. In fact, he finished uprooting the roots and he says, if you need any help, call me at any time. Which was gracious of him. I appreciate it very much. I did not deserve it. I did not repay him. I just accepted the gift of the loader. Now, but in the same time, speaking about our spiritual condition, you cannot take the gift of righteousness, or let's say it, the gift of the loader, if you don't understand that you need it. Listen what John Calvin says, we shall never be clothed with the righteousness of Christ, except we first know assuredly that we have no righteousness on our own. I have no business digging the beach with my shovel. It's useless. My winch on the truck was a joke. It was just spinning the wheels, literally. And then I got to realization, I need to call El Shammah because he has a loader. I cannot do it on myself, on my own. So I want to, in the chapter 3, I want to touch 3 areas really quick. Sin equalizes, God justifies, and that's a big word, justifies. I don't want you to be scared about this because it actually has a very practical meaning. And Jesus redeems. Again, I don't want to really get into this theology. I want this to be practical today. For us to get a spiritual loader in our life that would remove the root system that is so deep in us that sometimes when we pull that root system, it feels like I am losing myself in it because I thought that I am who I am and I always will be that way. Root system. And I pray that by the end of this message today, you, every single person, before you go home, by faith, actually, let me take this preposition by away. Let me put, instead of by faith, I would say through faith. There is a difference. Don't want to split the hair, but there is a difference by faith or through faith. So today, for the purposes of today's discussion, let's assume or agree that we are not using by faith because that's a different topic. Through faith, meaning I am using El Shammah, the loader, through his power, through his ability to operate that machine, to uproot the root systems And I'm praying that when you go home, through faith, you receive today justification of God and the redemption of Christ. The only problem is, you might ask, what is the redemption of Christ? That sounds like a pretty religious term, and it is. That's why I'm going to discuss this, because it has practical application. So, the base scripture from Romans 3:28, Apostle Paul argues at the end of the chapter, and that's the end of the chapter after he already made the argument. For we maintain that a person is justified by faith apart from the works of the law. I wish a lot of my Jewish brothers and sisters who try to keep the law read Romans once in a while. And not just read, but ask God to give them understanding. Once in a while. I wish I wish those people who preach Sabbath service read this once in a while. I wish my brothers and Adventists who celebrate their services on Sabbath in commemoration of God's law read the Bible once in a while. But I'm not going to go into I'm not in the mood of criticizing anybody today. I am in the mood of talking about this fundamental principle, because this is what people, even in the biblical churches, Bible churches, a lot of times they don't understand. They're confused about. Because we teach them a lot of different things in churches. We teach them how to be a good Christian, how to love their family, how to tithe, how to be a good citizen. And they are trying, and they're like, Pastor Oleg, I cannot uproot it. I try it as much as I can, but the root system is so deep that I cannot deal with it. And I'm like, as a good pastor, I will say, no, you have to try harder. And so you die trying. Today, I want to reject all these silly attempts and dive into the pure teaching of the gospel by Apostle Paul. Martin Luther again said, our works do not generate righteousness. Our attempts to follow the law. And law, you have to understand what law is. It's not a set of commands in the Bible. It's the frame of mind. It's a paradigm that you're living in. Meaning, like, sometimes people look at law from the perspective of following certain rules. Like, keep the Sabbath. Don't eat the pork. Don't do certain other things. 10 Commandments, for example. That's not what it means here by law. It means the principle where your set of, mind frame is working from the perspective of, if I follow this, I will be rewarded. If I don't follow, I will be punished. That's the concept. That's the worldview that he mentions here, the law. It's a paradigm. And he says, if you have this paradigm, it's not going to help you. He argues in his, you will see as much as I have time. He says, the law will never justify nobody. It's not capable. It's like my truck trying to pull those roots. I have a beautiful truck and a nice winch, and it's a great tool. But it's useless from the perspective of justifying a person. So a lot of people, Judaizers I call them, those who worship on Saturdays, who don't understand the gospel, they will say, what are you saying? Is the winch bad? Did I say that the winch bad? It's not bad, it's just used for completely different purpose. The law is good for only one purpose: to show you that you cannot remove roots on your own. That's all what it's good for. It cannot justify you. It cannot make you holy. It cannot make you right. It cannot do nothing else. It has one purpose and one purpose only: to show you that you have such a deep root system that you are not capable of dealing with it. That's all. And listen what Martin Luther said. Our works do not generate righteousness, rather our righteousness in Christ generate works. That's the gospel right here. Because when God declares you justified outside of law, outside of what you do, meaning outside of your effort, useless, pitiful efforts to uproot your root system, you're like, loader, come here, and the root system is removed outside of your efforts. Imagine me yesterday when Al-Shama was pulling the roots. He is pulling the roof and I am running with my shovel. Here and here. Shama would be like, hey, get out, get out. You're going to hurt yourself. Get out, because the land, the earth is shaking when he uprooting the roots. Get out of there with your religion. And so what Sabbatizers or Judaizers do, those who worship on Saturday, God is justifying and they're coming with their shovels. God, I'm going to do a little bit, help here. And God is like, get out with your stupid, pitiful efforts. You don't understand the grace and gospel of God. When you are justified outside of law, I want you, before you go home, talk to yourself, to your heart, to your mind. I am justified by faith. Outside of law, by redeeming work of Jesus Christ, God declares me justified, not me. God says you're justified because you believe. Listen, when I come to Danny and I like him because he's smart, has nice clothes, and I give him a candy, that's not justification of God. Because Danny has something in him that is likable. Meaning, what's not to like about Danny? Everybody likes Danny. So if I give him a candy, he deserves it. Justification of God is not that. Justification of God is outside of our likeness. There is nothing that in us that would actually earn favor of God on our own. Nothing. We're corrupted, sinful creatures that just like to go to Big E, eat that overpriced food and nothing else. And then suffer from all that illnesses and go to the hospitals because we overeat and saturated with fat food. That's all what we like. Now, if God looks at this person who doesn't like God, who is ugly, who is envious, who is completely corrupted. And God says, even though you're so ugly and there is nothing in you that is likable, I'm going to give you candy anyways because of my goodness. That's called grace. And that's called justification that is of God, not of you, outside of the law. Let me move on. Sin equalizes really quickly. So here is the idea. Apostle Paul says this righteousness is given, do you see that, not by faith, but through faith. Because by faith implies that you have to have faith. Through faith implies that faith is just like a bridge. Nothing you can do. You can just use faith as a bridge to access to God's righteousness. It's going to be like a channel that downloads God's righteousness into you. To all who believe. I want to ask you this question. To how many people he's talking about? To all, right? But here is the big issue. He says there is no difference between Jew and Gentile. This is, I call it great equalizers. So now we have these two groups of people, we discussed that. Jews who received the word of God, and Gentiles who completely were outside of promise of God. And Apostle Paul argues that, look, from the perspective of God's righteousness, there is no more difference because all sin and were void of glory of God. Let me demonstrate this. I'm going to give you a silly example, but it's a good example. Imagine we go on the roof of this building. And the law says, for us, in order to go to heaven, we need to jump from the roof of the building into the lake. If you jump into the lake, you're going to be saved. You just in the water and swim. So that's the description of our life. To do something that is impossible to do. The Apostle Paul is arguing nobody can keep the law. If you're a Jew, you cannot keep the law. If you're a Judaizer, you cannot keep the law. If you are an Adventist, you cannot keep the law. Even though you pretend and full of pride, religious pride, look, I'm not like these other churches, I keep the Sabbath. And Apostle Paul, like, are you kidding me? This is pitiful. There's a big fish to fry, bigger fish to fry here than just following the Sabbath. The root system is the problem here. You can keep all your Sabbath all you want, but you're still corrupted in your heart. You're still committed adulteries in your heart. You're still looking at these girls in the short, what you call it? Skirts all the time. Because you're sinful. You're still killing people because you hate brothers inside. You're still jealous, but I keep my Sabbath. So here's the example. All the people come on the roof. You, Jewish people, Adventists, and Judaizers who worship God on Sabbath. They come on the roof, and so we all jump from the roof. And some of us will jump much further to the lake. I, for example, probably would be much further than some of you. Some of you will just jump from the roof, right by the building. Some of you will go onto the grass over there. I will probably jump all the way to the asphalt because I'm a great jumper. But guess what? who of you will jump as far as to jump into the lake? What about those people who are Adventists? They will still fall somewhere in between. What of those who are moral, good people, good jumpers, less than good jumpers? We are all going to be the same by the end of the day, dead. We are all going to be dead because we jumped from the building. There is no way you can bridge the gap. And then Jesus came and he says, oh, okay, I got it. You guys try to do the law, crossing the bridge that is not possible for human beings. I am going to build a bridge for you from the roof all the way to the lake with the handrails so that you accidentally don't fall out from the bridge. And I will call this bridge Jesus Christ. And so now all the people, Judaizers, those who worship on Saturdays, the spiritual ones, moral ones, very immoral ones, those people who are good for nothing, low lives, drug addicts, alcohol addicts, sex addicts, anything addicts, people who have broken lives and people who have put together business people, successful people, not successful people, they are looking at the roof, looking at the bridge, and they're like, yeah, we are going. All of them. And I am good person. Never did anything bad in my life except some small, little, passive-aggressive things. But nothing more. I am walking with these people around me. I see drug addict. I see alcoholic. I see a guy who lives immoral life, an adulterous life kind of a thing. And he's walking with me. And I'm like, how come you're walking with me here? And the guy says, because Jesus says that I can cross the bridge. And all of a sudden, we're all united, all equalized in one thing. We all users of the bridge, called people of faith. That's why Apostle Paul says nobody is bragging. Because everybody sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So you keep the law and you don't keep the law. We fall on the asphalt anyway. What the difference does it make? You fall here or you fall 3 feet further. You still fall down. There is no reason for you to boast with your law. Go ahead and use the bridge. That's his argument right here. Vernon McGee said, all of us need the righteousness of Christ. There is no difference. A great equalizer. I need to move on to the second point. God justifies. Apostle Paul argues Romans 3:24, if you just remember these words. And all are justified freely. Freely. Did I pay El Shammah to pull the roots? Did I give him some rewards? No, he did it for me freely. By his grace, through the redemption that comes by Christ Jesus. Now, I want you to give you this point of justification. What is justification? John MacArthur says justification as a definition. Justification is God's declaration that all the demands of the law are fulfilled on behalf of the believing sinner through the righteousness of Jesus Christ. All the law, all your Sabbath keeping, not keeping, all your requirements of the law being fulfilled by this person, Jesus Christ, the bridge. And based on that, God says in his righteousness, he says, I have in my righteousness right to declare you justified. Justify, somebody says, it's a word that means just if you'd never sin. That's justified. So God declares, not you. You didn't do anything. You're still a loser. You still had the problems and issues and brokenness and corruptions and damages. You grew up in the broken home. You were developed in the bad atmosphere, toxic environment, and all that other stuff. Psychologists make money of you because you're irredeemable. And God says, I know, but the loader is coming. And because the loader is coming, it's not because of you. I, God Almighty, hereby declare you justified. Now, I want you to ponder this a little bit. Can you right now, sitting in your chair, think about this? I am justified of all my sins and falling short and problems and mistakes that I did in my life. Can you hear the voice of God declaring over you, brother, you're justified. Sister, you're justified. As if you never sinned. And that's not you. It's not pastor talking to you. It God declares you justified. That's a big point. You know, justification deals with sin because it's a legal term. It has something to do with you declaring not guilty, like in a court. Do you know how many people are suffering from guilt? In fact, when an artist came up with the idea to produce those bags, like, you know, in airplanes, they have a bags for basket that you want to throw up. So he came up with the bag, and he says on the back something to the extent, guilt disposal bags. It's a funky idea. It's like a regular paper bag, but guilt disposal. And so instruction to the bag was, if you feel guilty, buy this bag and breathe out your guilt into the bag. Wrap this bag and dispose of this bag. So it's a very bad business idea, but surprisingly that overnight, people were buying thousands of these bags. Why? Because we are living in the guilt epidemics. And there is no psychologist who can deal with that. Why? Because the root. When God declares you justified, that uproots the issue from the ground once and forever. I know that you fell short, but you hereby declared not guilty. And then, last point, Jesus redeems. When we're talking about redemption, justification is a legal term, but when we're talking about redemption, it has a little bit different meaning. It has something to do, like it comes from the term, from that culture where the slavery was rampant. And the idea was, if you have a slave and you pay ransom for this slave, and then once you buy the slave out in the slave market, you let it go free. That's called redemption. I heard a story about an uncle and a nephew swimming in the ocean, and the shark came and beat the nephew so hard that completely severed the leg of the nephew. But this uncle was not that easily intimidated. He got a bat on the beach, you know, the piece of wood, and he jumped into the water and was just fighting the shark, and actually intimidated to the point the shark swam away. So he grabbed the nephew with completely severed leg, found the leg in the water, got them into the emergency, and the doctors were able to sew the leg back somehow. They can do it, And what's interesting is that actually the boy recovered to the point that he could walk normally on that leg that was completely disattached. Do you know what this leg meant from the spiritual perspective? Redeemed leg. Was completely destroyed and then attached back to the point that you could function. Now, redemption also means that it removes you from the marketplace, but also removes you from the power of sin. That's why a lot of people don't experience this redemption in their life, because they kind of are saved, but they feel like they are old nature anyways. I mean, you come to church, you do these things and everything, but where is the redemption? Redemption is when the root is completely uprooted and all of a sudden the sin that has power over sinful person, because of the redemption, doesn't have power over you anymore. That's the meaning of redemption. I read a story about this one young, beautiful girl being in the slave market a long time ago, and this one rich man who came to the market, and he noticed her for her unusual beauty, and everybody was beating for this girl because they had sinister motives in their hearts. They just wanted to get this beautiful girl slave. And so this rich man decided to buy her out. The beating was fearful, and everybody was overbeating. He paid a tremendous amount of money for this girl. But he got her. And so he took her home, and the girl was fearful, and she did not know what to expect. She kind of figured that she was a slave. There is no much room for maneuver. And the guy took the paper and wrote that you have been released and put a stamp on it. You're free to go. And the girl said, "What do you mean you're free to go?" The guy said, "Well, you're free to go anywhere you want. You're free. You are no longer, the status has changed. You're no longer a slave." And she says, does it mean that I can do whatever I want? And he says, "Yep, you can do whatever you want. Nobody can tell you what to do anymore. You're no longer a slave." And so with tears in her eyes, she says, "If I can go wherever I want, and if I can do whatever I want, I decide to stay with you." That's a story that demonstrates my relationship to my God. I don't have anywhere else to go by my God and Redeemer. Nobody forces me to serve God. I just realized how deep this redemption is. I just realized that I was irredeemable. No matter how I tried, the darkness of my heart and the sin inside of me was so prevalent, it was like a 100% cancer. I was completely irredeemable. And then here we have Christ, who said, "I have a loader. You had fun to deal with your roots yet? I have a loader for you. Do you want to have it?" And I'm like, "God, really? I want to help you a little bit. I want to worship you on Saturday." And God is like, "Silly you. Do you want a loader or not?" And I said, at a certain point, I said, "Yeah, I feel like I need you, God, to deal with my root system." And God says like this, "You have it. It was a twinkle of an eye. You have it. You're righteous and you're redeemed. And I became a different person right at that very moment. Now, if you're tired of fighting with your roots, if you're trying to still please God with your achievements and your efforts, if you're trying to earn God's favor in your life, this message is for you. The gift of God, righteousness of God, is the gift. The only requirement that you have for this gift, for you to take it and open it. When I say I will try it myself a little bit longer, I refuse to open the gift. I wish you go home 100% justified and 100% redeemed today. But the thing is, the kicker is that you need to open that box, the gift of God. How do you do that? You say, El Shama, bring your equipment. I'm done. I'm done trying. El Shama, bring your equipment. Fix my beach to the point that I can function the way how I were created to function. Uproot the corruption from my heart. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm done preaching, but before I finish the service today, I want you to show a little video. It's an old hymn. It's something that we know by heart, some of you. But I invite you to stand on your feet right now, all of us. And as we are worshiping the Lord for the redemption and justification, some of you who haven't embraced the gift, I invite you to come forward and say, I'm done fighting. I need the gift. Jesus, I need justification and redemption today. I'm not going home. I need it. I want to open the box. So during this video, when we are worshiping the Lord, watching this video, I welcome you come forward. And we would pray with you, simple prayer. God, be my Redeemer. Be my Savior. I can't really